Welcome back to HQ, where the welterweight division will be on full display this weekend at Madison Square Garden for UFC 322. 3 bouts on the main card, including the main event. A title defense for Della Maddalena against Islam Makhachev. In the co-main, women's flyweight strap on the line between champ and challenger Valentina Shevchenko and Zhang Weili. Welcome to our UFC 322 Super Preview. I'm Tommy Tran, now joined by Brian Campbell. We've got Danny Vitlani on deck. BC, always great to be with you. Della Maddalena. Boy, what a rise from the Contender Series to King of 170. What has interested you the most and have been excited the most about his first title defense coming up here?
Well, first of all, that it's at New York's Madison Square Garden in one of the biggest shows of the year. Against whom? How about everyone's perennial pound-for-pounder in Islam Makhachev, who gave up the lightweight title, moved up to welterweight, and talk about a difficult first title defense for JDM. But it's not something he's scared of. Certainly, he brings that tough boxing game with him, and also an expanded ground game. When you look at the team around him that he's brought in, featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski, fellow countryman, and Craig Jones, the ground specialist. You're going to have a super prepared JDM for everything Islam brings to the table in this one. Maybe Della Maddalena came to the title opportunity in ways that we didn't think after being injured and somewhat inactive in recent years. But when it came to that injury to top contender Shavkat Rakhmonov, the door opened and Della Maddalena answered, looking poised, looking powerful, and taking the title from Belal Muhammad. What we have on Saturday is a super showdown at 170 that will decide so much, as Islam brings so much potential history to the table in this matchup. You brought up the former lightweight champ who vacated that belt back in May that opened the doors for Ilia Topuria. So again, 155 to 170. When it comes to Makhachev, what questions, if any, do you have about the move and weight? We just want to see what he looks like at this weight class, and particularly, can he go blow for blow in the striking game with Della Maddalena? Look, if early indications, training photos, shirtless photos, or anything, we are going to see a very jacked and physically strong Islam Makhachev, who has all the skills in the game. And when I teased earlier about the history, he's not just looking to be a member of the exclusive club of 2 division champions in UFC history. He can also equal Anderson Silva's record with 16 consecutive victories. Whether you have him pound for pound number 1, where he has stayed in recent years, or whether names like Topuria or Merab have passed him of late, Islam's one of the best fighters in the history of this sport. And even though he came to us sort of in the shadow of his teammate, former lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov, who's now his coach, you wonder if he has the opportunity to pass Khabib historically if he continues to add on a second title. Tying a UFC record could do that, but there's no holes in Makhachev's game. We just have to see, does he have the sturdiness? Does he have the power to go blow for blow as long as he has to with JDM until inevitably this fight goes to the ground? Both fighters have talked about legacy going into this fight. Who adds to their legacy after the fight, BC? As much as I love the toughness and the offensive game that Della brings to the table, Islam Makhachev, as I said, one of the greatest fighters in the history of the sport, no longer needs to be under the shadow of Khabib Nurmagomedov, his longtime teammate. They both came up under Khabib's late father, Abdulmanap. But what Islam Makhachev has carved out and the run he's on, he can extend that win streak to 16, as I mentioned. I think he gets the job done, mostly because there's no holes in his game. And as good as Della Maddalena has done to upgrade his ground game, if this goes to the ground, you're going to see Makhachev be a submission threat the entire time that they're down there. He has too many weapons. I think that he's been cutting a good deal of his ability in cutting to the lightweight division to defend that title 4 times. Now we're going to see him at full strength at 170. I've got to go Makhachev this Saturday, and what can only be looked at as a fight we cannot wait to see. This is the big time at MSG, and I'm fired up. Yeah, if he gets it done, joins the short list. We'll talk about the co-main in just a second, but this weekend really will showcase the depth of the welterweight division, BC. Who stands to gain the most in the other 2 fights on the card? Well, look, top 1 through 15, I think this is the deepest division in the sport. But we have some very tough matchups when you look at perennial contender Sean Brady going up against a Michael Morales who has been on the rise and is a violent knockout artist. And just the same across the board. Look, Brady can wrestle. We all know that. Is his striking on the same level of Morales? That's what he's going to have to show here. Brady has been close to a title opportunity, and you wonder if a breakthrough win here against Morales can do that. Although the division is so crowded, it's hard to tell. On the other side, you're going to have Carlos Prates, who is streaking, coming off a breakthrough stoppage win following his first defeat against Ian Gary. This is going to be just as enticing a matchup against the former champion and Leon Edwards to find out whether Edwards is coming or going in this title picture, and whether Prates, despite that little cigarette habit that he's got, can continue to climb the rankings. If you're asking me in these two fights who has the biggest opportunity to make that leap, I do think it's Sean Brady, but he's going to have to keep this fight on the ground against Morales to get there. Either way, this 170-pound division will be on full display, and we've got an even bigger matchup coming up at UFC Qatar just soon enough. This division's on fire. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah, Edwards, a former champ in his own right. Let's get to the co-main where a title is up for grabs. We're talking about the women's flyweight, and for Valentina Shevchenko, old hat. She's been here many times before, BC. 9th title defense this weekend.
Yeah, and she has an opportunity to equal her longtime rival Amanda Nunes with the most title wins on the female side in UFC history. But Zhang Weili coming in, this is a female super fight. Look, it may not be the biggest women's match of all time. Maybe Amanda Nunes, Chris Cyborg fits that role, or we've seen historic matchups like Chris Cyborg, Gina Carano, or the Ronda Rousey run was incredible and must-see TV. But on a pound-for-pound level, there's so much history at stake between these two completely well-rounded fighters, by the way. And if you look at their resumes, for as great as they are in first ballot Hall of Famers, speaking of Shevchenko and Zhang Weili, neither really have that one singular definitive career victory over a fellow future Hall of Famer. Obviously, Zhang Weili beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That's a big win right there. But this offers each of them so much opportunity to take one step further in the all-time pound-for-pound rankings on the women's side in UFC and MMA. And if you look at the run that Valentina's been on, regaining her title from Alexa Grasso in their trilogy, despite being in her late 30s, there continues not to be a flaw in her game, ironing out in her entire skill set. And she comes here as a very, very slight betting favorite against Zhang Weili in a fight that's been a virtual pick-em all week. I cannot wait to see this historic matchup between two of the greatest female fighters this sport has ever produced.
So for the challenger, as a former two-time strawweight champ at 115, does she get it done at 125, or does Shevchenko come out in the end?
Look, as much as this is a pick-em fight and it really feels like it could go either way, I think Shevchenko's just that much better. And this will be, of course, contested at 125 pounds, which is her more natural weight class. For Zhang Weili, she's beaten everybody she's ever fought in the octagon with the exception of Rose Namajunas, who she holds 2 defeats in strawweight title fights against. She as well has ironed out the parts of her game that were not up to the level, particularly on the ground. But the size difference is going to be interesting, even though Zhang Weili, like Islam Makhachev, has filled out with muscle for this move up, which does not appear to be just for one fight. She seems to be moving toward flyweight going forward. But head-to-head, looking at their flaws and strengths, I think Shevchenko has just enough of an advantage on the feet as a counter-striker to give Zhang Weili problems. The same problems, by the way, that Rose Namajunas and at times Joanna Jędrzejczyk was able to do to Weili. I love this matchup. I still love Valentina, though, to get maybe the biggest and best win of her entire great future Hall of Fame career.
All right, I'm taking notes. One champ keeps the strap, another one gains one Saturday night at MSG. Our thanks to Brian Campbell. Here's a look at the main card once again. Both title challengers can join a short list of those who have won belts in 2 different divisions. There have been 10. The list of those to hold them simultaneously is even shorter. It all goes down to the Big Apple this weekend at the world's most famous arena. Let's continue the conversation with Danny Vitlani, a.k.a. Danny Brasco, for his best bets for UFC 322. Both title fights up for grabs. Let's start with Jack Della, Maddalena, underdog to Islam Makhachev. You're talking 2-1 versus just under 3-1 if you want to lay it with the challenger. What's the play here?
Great to talk fights with you, Tommy, and there's no way that I'm not taking a shot at Jack Della, better than 2-to-1 odds here. Plus 215, I think this guy can give Islam Makhachev problems. Now, we know he's the natural welterweight, and he's got that nasty southpaw boxing. I love the way he mixes his punches to the head and body. But what I love the most about Maddalena is his grappling improvements. We saw him take that title against Belal Muhammad, the pressure boxer, pressure grappler who looks to break you, and Jack Della would not be broken. In fact, every time Belal clinched up, entered into those grappling ranges, he paid for it in the clinch. He got hurt bad with shots to the body, uppercuts, and I think Jack Della's grappling game and grappling defense has really come a long way. Not only was he able to defend takedowns, he was able to get up back off the floor, and that's really key here. People are going to look at that Gilbert Burns fight where Burns had him close to defeat. And what happened in that third round? Maddalena, who I believe is better now, was able to reverse the jiu-jitsu ace Burns, knee him, and take that fight in dramatic fashion. So he's showing me a lot of improvements. He's showing me a lot of heart. And BC talked about it on the previous segment. They flew in the boys from down under. Craig Jones, perhaps the best BJJ practitioner walking planet Earth, and Alex Volkanovski flew in to help Maddalena train for Makhachev on their own dime. They just want to help this guy. Obviously, Volk has his series with Makhachev, wants the revenge there. But I really think Maddalena can give him problems. And if this fight plays out on the feet, Makhachev, who will be physical, who will be a capable striker, may have to go through a lot of adversity to force the fight to the floor. If he can't keep it there for the majority of 5 rounds, he might get beat up on the feet like Belal did. And I think there's plenty of value at plus 215 on Jack Della to become the welterweight champion against Islam.
I think you bring up a good point, because something like Michael Chandler talked about, Makhachev is absorbing those shots. It's a different kind of pain that you're seeing in the different weight divisions. So to your point, you're taking the value at plus 215. What about the co-main? We have Valentina Shevchenko, a slight favorite over Zhang Weili. You want to take the challenger. She's even money. What's the play there?
What a super fight. This is one of the best women's fights you could possibly dream up. And I'm taking Zhang Weili to go for greatness and become a 2-division champion. Now, Valentina is one of the most savvy MMA players ever. Her game is so tactical. But I think the athlete that Zhang Weili is presents problems here, especially for a near 38-year-old Valentina who's maybe slightly slowing down. You look at Valentina, and yes, excellent wins in her last 2, especially over Manon Fiorot, who was thought to be a really capable challenger. But go back a little further, and you see a split decision win over Taila Santos. You see that submission loss to Alexa Grasso, that draw to Grasso. I think there's ways that Zhang Weili can out-athletic Valentina in this fight, can outpace her, bring that furious, striking attack, and bring her strength too that's underrated in the grappling department. We've seen videos of Zhang Weili picking up the former heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou. Her strength is incredible. So yes, she's making the jump up to flyweight here, but I don't think you're going to see a massive physique differential from Valentina. That remains to be seen. We got to watch the weigh-ins on Friday, really see how they match up in front of each other. But I think Weili's going to be totally game. We saw in her last fight against Tatiana Suarez, who closed as the betting favorite, that after 1 round, Weili was able to make those adjustments on the ground and then out-grapple Suarez, the phenom, the boogie woman of the division. So if Weili can win the grappling exchanges, I think she's going to be faster and throw out more volume than Valentina Shevchenko and be able to edge out this fight in a very competitive affair. But it's one of the fights I'm looking forward to most this entire year, Tommy.
Dan, you got less than 30 seconds. Best bet rest of the card. What do you got?
Give me Chepe Machine Gun Mariscal here. Plus 120 dog. He's fighting Pat Sabatini, a grappling ace. But Sabatini's a guy who only has a 48% takedown rate. If Mariscal can keep this standing, he is tough to deal with. Bat out of hell on the feet. Always throwing, always tough. I do not think he should be the dog here. Give me Chepe.
All right. Best of luck to you and all of our bettors for this weekend. 322 from the Big Apple at MSG. It's all lining up to be a great weekend in mixed martial arts. And boy, are we happy to have that in our building. Paramount Plus, the promotional company that is the UFC, coming in January 2026. That's a couple short months away.